First, tonight, President-elect Donald Trump has officially been sworn in as the 47th U.S. president, taking the oath of office to formally kick off his historic second term in the White House. The inauguration marks the official transfer of presidential power, with the executive branch changing hands from the Biden administration to the Trump administration. In his inaugural address, he announced the start of a golden age in America. He also hit out at the Biden administration and its handling of the migrant crisis. Here's a look at some highlights from that inaugural speech.
The golden age of America begins right now. From this day forward, our country will flourish and be respected again all over the world. We will be the envy of every nation, and we will not allow ourselves to be taken advantage of any longer. During every single day of the Trump administration, I will very simply put America first. From this moment on, America's decline is over. Our liberties and our nation's glorious destiny will no longer be denied, and we will immediately restore the integrity, competency, and loyalty of America's government. The journey to reclaim our republic has not been an easy one, that I can tell you. Those who wish to stop our cause have tried to take my freedom and indeed to take my life. Just a few months ago in a beautiful Pennsylvania field, an assassin's bullet ripped through my ear. But I felt then, and believe even more so now, that my life was saved for a reason. I was saved by God to make America great again. A tide of change is sweeping the country. Sunlight is pouring over the entire world. And America has the chance to seize this opportunity like never before. But first, we must be honest about the challenges we face. While they are plentiful, they will be annihilated by this great momentum that the world is now witnessing in the United States of America. As we gather today, our government confronts a crisis of trust. For many years, a radical and corrupt establishment has extracted power and wealth from our citizens, while the pillars of our society lay broken and seemingly in complete disrepair. All illegal entry will immediately be halted, and we will begin the process of returning millions and millions of criminal aliens back to the places from which they came. Disease-free, the United States will once again consider itself a growing nation, one that increases our wealth, expands our territory, builds our cities, raises our expectations, and carries our flag into new and beautiful horizons. And we will pursue our manifest destiny into the stars, launching American astronauts to plant the stars and stripes on the planet Mars. This week, I will also end the government policy of trying to socially engineer race and gender into every aspect of public and private life. We will forge a society that is colorblind and merit-based. As of today, it will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female.
And for more now from the day's events, let's cross to Arise international correspondent Adefemi Akinsanya, who is in Washington, D.C. Adefemi, good to speak with you.
Hello, Nkechi. Good evening. I hope you are way warmer than we are in Abuja than it is here in Washington, D.C. I hope you've had a good day.
Definitely, Adefemi. I'm sure your day has been packed. I just wanted to ask you, Trump's inaugural speech, what are some of the takeouts? I know that the meat of his inaugural speech has been America first. He doesn't mince words when he says that. What are some of the other takeouts and highlights that have been making waves from that inaugural speech?
Thank you, Nkechi. Let's start with foreign policy. As you've already said, what we see with the coming of this second Trump administration is him putting clearly his actions at this point behind his words when it comes to putting America first in this second Trump administration. As I said, let's start with foreign policy. He spoke very candidly about how he would consider what we call today the Gulf of Mexico. He would move to change that to be the Gulf of America. He also said that he would be reclaiming the Panama Canal. Just two examples of very aggressive foreign policy ideas that he made sure would sit and resonate very well with the American crowd, especially as you're saying that he has always maintained that his priority is putting American people and their priorities first. To that effect, he also talks about the establishment of an external revenue service, just the opposite of an internal, where you have an internal tax system in a country. He's talking about how tariffs on American goods would be higher so that people who would be paying for American goods and services to the betterment of American people. So he did really hit those notes that we heard him talk about during the election campaign and thereafter when he was declared winner. So really not too much to be surprised about. But when we look at the quality of this speech, it must be said that he spoke very well. He spoke quite poignantly. He touched on his own experiences when it came to the lead up to the election, and he talked about how he believed that his life was spared so that he could save America. He talked about how America had tried to take his freedom and take his life. Of course, a nod to that assassination attempt last summer. So he did really do a good job of weaving all of his personal policies into. It looks like Donald Trump could be emerging here. We stood on the street outside of Capital One Arena where the early bits of the inaugural party are supposed to be taking place. So we are expecting Donald Trump to make an appearance at any moment now. But just staying with his speech, as I said, he touched on his assassination attempt and how he felt as though he didn't die and he was able to survive those attempts on his life because he was supposed to reclaim the mantle as the 47th president of the United States. So a lot to discuss there. In the clips that we were playing before we started speaking, in Nkechi, you do hear him say things along the line of gender, about as far as United States policy is concerned, there are only two genders that will be recognized, male and female. And that is something that will definitely resonate with people who believe in these very strict ideals and classic ideals when it comes to gender identity in the United States. And so when we look ahead to the very early bits of his second iteration of the presidency, it will be very interesting to see in what ways America will continue to be put first. We do know that he is very much keeping to his word when it comes to the executive orders. Some 200 are expected to be on the way, covering a whole breadth of issues. The southern border, he talks about how cartel groups would be referred to as terror organizations. Also TikTok, war in the Middle East. He talked about how he wants to be a pacifist, really a peacemaker of wars and really stay out of conflicts himself. So it was a very, very interesting speech. But thereafter giving his first post-inaugural address, he went into what is called the Emancipation Room and gave another speech. And you can tell that that speech was off the top of his head. You can tell that that wasn't one that went over continual drafts. It wasn't as poetic as his inaugural speech, and it was more like the Trump we are used to hearing, because he spoke very candidly about how there was a lot that he wanted to say during the inaugural speech, but he wasn't able to. He threw a lot more shade at Joe Biden, talked about how his presidency failures had led to what the American people want, which is him, which is Trump coming again and showing what America first would really look like. And he also talked about his critics. He talks about Liz Cheney. He used quite colorful language to describe her. She is obviously a Republican who, in the lead up to this election, joined forces with Kamala Harris, and just showed another example about how even across the board there was some dissonance when it came to Donald Trump, but he was obviously able to circumvent that and emerge as the president, somebody who won the popular vote and the electoral college. So this is somebody who's coming into office as a comparatively very powerful president. He has a Senate backing behind him, and you can imagine that despite the criticism that he has faced, the legal woes that he has faced, he is definitely going to be the person that the people are looking forward to hearing from.
Adefemi, it wouldn't be Donald Trump if he didn't give a candid speech. That was expected of him. I wanted to talk about international perceptions, reflections, or reactions to this inauguration or Trump's second coming. We've heard from Olaf Scholz, we've heard from Keir Starmer, Netanyahu, Ursula von der Leyen. What about African leaders? What are they saying? What are they expecting this administration holds for Africa?
This is the thing, the United States is commonly referred to as a superpower, and that's because of its strength when it comes to the economy, when it comes to population, when it comes to military, and many other tenets of a superpower. And so when you hear the leader of a superpower refer to himself and say that his priority in his leadership will be putting his own country first, that's going to reverberate around the world, and you will see many countries shifting and aligning themselves to prepare for the coming of this Trump presidency. For African countries, it is going to be very interesting to see in terms of economy, in terms of trade, what this new leadership will look like, what it will mean for them. Now, when it comes to the history of Donald Trump and the things that he has said about global South countries in the developing world, including Nigeria, he hasn't had the greatest history. You'll remember he referred to Nigeria and many other countries in the global South as S-hole countries during a visit or a speech alongside then President Muhammadu Buhari. So you can imagine that when it comes to Africa, when it comes to the developing world, when it comes to Nigeria specifically, there is definitely going to be a lot of eagerness and perhaps a little anxiety as to what this presidency is actually going to mean, what rules there were going to be in place, how does he see America's relationship aligning with Africa in this way. And it will be interesting again to compare this with the now over Biden presidency. Joe Biden left it to the very end of his administration before he made his first trip to mainland Africa, traveling to Angola. And the surface level of that visit was to look at re-establishing ties in the aftermath of the transatlantic slave trade. But also, as we know, the real meat and potatoes behind that visit to Angola was the establishment of this libido corridor and how America could position itself to be able to take some form of advantage when it comes to the mineral wealth that Angola, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Rwanda, these countries have. So again, when it comes to Donald Trump and what he has to say about the coming of his own presidency as it relates to Africa, we just have to sit back and see what type of relationships he's going to have. But we do know that African presidents, even when he won the election, had extended their congratulations, including Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari. So we will sit back and see. We do know that looking ahead to this coming week, Vice President of Nigeria, Kashim Shettima, will be in Davos for the World Economic Forum. And you can imagine that some conversations about what is happening in America will permeate through those meetings. So we will continue to keep our eyes and ears across what is happening around the world, including the United States and, of course, Nigeria.
Adefemi Akinsanya in Washington, D.C., thank you so much.